He got his smicha and master's degree from Yeshiva University. Then for 20 years he was an army chaplain, including as well in Korea and in Germany. Now, thank God he lives here. His wife is on our committee, and I'm delighted to say that his mother is here as well. So, Rabbi Itzkowitz, please.
Teaching Ulpan to a group of women on Wednesday afternoons, and there's room for another one. So if anybody's interested in that, see me after. Just because I've been here, I don't know how many years we give the Bar Torah. They're delicious and enticing and welcoming. Love and Malka. How many years is it now? I haven't kept record. It's a chazakah for sure. It's at least 3 years. So I'd like to say that even though it's a chazakah, it's not necessary. I won't feel bad if you ask somebody else sometime to give Bar Torah. I like to hear other people once in a while too. So I'm not saying not to ask, but if you don't ask me next time, I won't feel in the slightest way offended. All right. Tonight, being that we have the parsha of Yitro, of course the Ten Commandments, many other highlights in it, maybe I like to start talking usually by asking a question. Those who are sleeping would wake up immediately and maybe try to answer. But the question is, where in the first word of the parsha do we have the idea of EMUNAH? No. Midrashim, you have to think of Rashi. Anybody? What's the first word? Vayishma. Vayishma Yitro. What does Rashi say there? Mashbuah Shama Uba. What did he hear that caused him to come? He left Midian, the comfort. He was the high priest of Midian, and he comes to the Midbar, to the wilderness, to see the Jewish people. His son-in-law, of course, grandchildren. But what did he hear that led him to come? So there's a machloket. The Rashi doesn't bring the whole midrash, but Rabbi Yeshua briefly says, Milchemet Amalek Shama Uva. He heard the war of Amalek and how the Israelites, fresh nation of slaves coming out of Egypt, defeated the Amalekites. Rabbi Elazar Amodai says Matan Torah Shama Uva. He heard Matan Torah. That's already a machloket if he came before or after, but according to this midrash. And Rabbi Eliezer says that he heard Kriyat Yamsuf. Now Kriyat Yamsuf was first, of course, and then was Amalek, and then Matan Torah. So the question arises, after hearing about Kriyat Yamsuf, what does he have to hear about Amalek? What's so special about hearing Amalek that he has to come after that? No, here we have the idea of EMUNAH. Because Amalek begimatria is what? I like gematria.
It's the same as Safek.
Safek, there we are, okay. Catching on. Safek, doubt. Now, this was a war he heard about where they were attacking Hashem. Milchama Hashem ba'Amalek. They were attacking, they wanted to cool off the zeal of the Jewish people, of the Israelites, and to show that they're not so hot after Hashem after all. They wanted to cool them off. So they wanted to bring their bitachon, their emunah down. Well, Baruch Hashem, we have emunah today. We won against Amalek, and we have this great group of women who work so hard to do so much good. I'll elaborate in a couple of minutes on that. But, you see, it was a victory for emunah. And indeed, you picked a good name for your organization. Not you, maybe whoever picked it. Coming to the Ten Commandments, Aseret HaDibrot. I can't gloss over the fifth one, or the fourth one I'd like to say something about, but I have to say something about the fifth because my mother is here. Kabed et avicha v'et imecha, l'man yarechun yamecha, and l'man yirbu yemechem, and all that. We hope that Hashem gives her many more good years of life. Her devoted assistant here, Julianne, who has been hired a few months ago to help her, and we hope both of the shidduch works for many, many years to come, and that in that zchut we'll be able to also be many years on our land, and in peace, in fact, on our land. So that was one of the commandments. Another commandment I'd like to elaborate on a little bit is Zachor et Yom HaShabbat likadsho, sanctify the Shabbos. You know that it's repeated again in Dvarim, but with a different word. How does it start there? Shamor. what's the difference between Zachor and Shamor?
One is positive and one's negative.
Okay, the mitzvot aseh, mitzvot lo taseh, right? To make kiddush, onik Shabbos, all the good things that we enjoy on Shabbos. Get a rest on Shabbos, right? Sheina b'Shabbat Tanug, the abbreviation of Shabbos, Shin Bet Taf. Sheina b'Shabbat Tanug, it's a joy to have a rest on Shabbos. And all those good things are especially loved by whom? By those who can afford it, the Ashirim, people who can afford to eat special food, basar, dagim, chol matamim, all the delicious things for Shabbos. So some of you might be wondering about the cards here. It says bed. Not that I'm tired or anything yet. I did rest today. And the other one says summer. We hope for beautiful weather, but we need the rain as well. These are cards that my wife discarded. And Baltashka to show them away after she was teaching English, you know. She went to some warm water and things. And I used them for my notes. All right. Anyway, so Zachor is especially beloved by the Ashirim, the people who can afford it. Shamor, on the other hand, is very easy to do. You don't do anything, right? You kind of take it easy on Shabbos. You sit back. You don't have to buy all the things. You're observing the negative commandments. Shev al taseh. So that is Shamor. It's very difficult, though, to switch roles. For the rich people to give up their parnasa did not work one day a week. As you know, many, many years ago, especially in the Western countries, in America, which I know, grandparents, grandparents who came there, if they didn't work on Shabbos, it was very, very difficult. So it was a great sacrifice for people to close their businesses, to tell their people, their workers, to take off, and so on. They wanted to, make the greenback, make money. So it's very difficult for the Ashirim maybe to keep the Shamor, and it's, on the other hand, very difficult for the Aniyim, the poor people, to properly enjoy the Shabbos with all the good things that you're supposed to have. And so, EMUNAH, the group here, remember both. They observe the Torah without compromise. Not only that, but they remember those who cannot afford perhaps childcare, chinuch, and they sacrifice for that. So this, again, is a very good thing about this organization. We have to be makir tov. We have to always appreciate and thank not only Hashem for the beautiful rains that we've had this year and the snow that we had this year, but the gashmiyut. Of course, Geshem is related to gashmiyut. Im ein kemach ein Torah. It's a very short story I'd like to say about the Chavetz Chaim, and then one other one will be concluding. Chavetz Chaim once had a Gaon, a great Torah scholar, come to his house, and he was talking, he was giving Torah to the Chavetz Chaim. Talking, Chidushim and all kinds of stuff. I don't know if to impress the Chavetz Chaim or just to sit and learn, get the mitzvah of learning, whatever. I'm not saying why he did it, but the Chavetz Chaim, after a few hours of this, put his hand on his stomach, and he said in Yiddish, "Die Behema levil essen." The part of him which is the Bahami, the part animal, needs to eat something. In other words, even he admitted, "Ein kemach in Torah." Sometimes you got to eat something. And this is a beautiful, beautiful dinner that we're having here, and I hope it gives us a lot of strength to eat Torah and a lot for the organization. I'd like to close, though, another pasuk from the Parsha that we have to say here because these women work so hard. If it weren't for the women, what would be with us, with the husbands, with the sons, fathers? Ko tomar levet Yaakov v'taged livnei Yisrael, the very famous pasuk, right, in this week's Parsha. Tell the women, Beit Yaakov, Rashi says, Elu hanashim, and then after that, the Taged Livnei Yisrael, and then tell the Harim, the men, he says. Why were the women mentioned first? There are many explanations to this. But I'd like to share an experience that Rabbi Meir Shapiro once had. He was on a fundraising tour, and he spoke in a shul, in a synagogue, trying to raise money for his great yeshiva, Chachmei Lublin. And he gave a terrific speech. He was an orator. He was a member of the Sejm, in Poland. He was a member of the parliament. And they say, I heard that whenever you gave him something from any part of the Shas, any part of and we learned Daf Yomi, thanks to him also, some of us here. He established that way back, 1923 or something? And it's gone through so many cycles, learning a Daf of Gemara a day. And he was trying to raise funds. They say that if you would have told any part of the Mishnah or Talmud, would have mentioned it to him, he could tie it in with whatever you're learning today. Bring everything together. The whole Torah is one, he said. But anyway, he was trying to raise money, and he gave a terrific speech. And people clapped, and he said, you know, we used to sacrifice a lot in the past, especially mothers used to sacrifice. They used to send not only their children, but even their husbands used to leave home to go to yeshivas far away, and they had to work very hard and sacrifice property and time and work and everything else. And he tried to point out, you know, how much in the past Jews sacrificed for an old neighbor here, sacrificed for chinuch, which EMUNAH is doing too. Well, at the end of that, people clapped, but nobody came forth. Nobody raised their hand to give a donation. Until one woman, her name happened to be Dvorah, he found out later, stepped out of the women's section, came over, and started taking off her rings, her earrings, her bracelet, necklace. She laid it on the table, all of her jewelry, and she said, I'm donating this. I don't have any money here, but this is it. Some women followed her and did the same. And then he was a little bit shocked, taken aback, didn't expect, you know, the evening to go that way. So Rabbi Meir Shapiro, so happens to be my mother's maiden name, Shapiro, too. I hope we're related somehow to Rabbi Meir Shapiro. I haven't found it yet. He said to her, he said, you know, this is a great thing that the women are doing. He said, but of course the husbands are going to be a little upset that their women don't have any jewelry. So I'm giving a chance to the husbands now to redeem their wives' jewelry. And they indeed came forth. Many of the men, no, they didn't want to get hit on the head, those who didn't come, I guess, forth to redeem their wives' jewelry. And they did, and he was able to raise a lot of money, thanks to that Devorah who came forth and the other ladies. Now, he closed his speech by saying, you know, he quoted this pasuk from this week's portion. Ko tomar levet Yaakov taged livnei Israel. First tell the women, and then the men. He says, now I see why. He says, if God would have first offered the Torah to the men, it would have been Ein Sof. We would have waited and waited. Nobody would have come forward. So it had to be to the women first. Again, I'd like to bless all the women here and in your work, the great work that you do. By the way, he said also that the Devorah, the name Devorah, who was the famous Devorah? Eshet Lapidot. Eshet Lapidot. And he said, you know why it says that she was the wife of Lapidot? What do we have to know her husband's name for? Devorah was a great prophetess. Her husband, what did he do? We don't see anything he did. Barak did. Barak ben Abinoam. But Lapidot says, because he says, Devorah made petilot. Lapidot, she made for the Mishkan. Devorah, you probably heard this before, Midrash. Rashi brings it right there on the spot in Sefer Shoftim, that Lapidot means that she made these Lapidot, these torches, these flames, for the Beit HaMikdash. That was the big thing. And he said the women here also. They lit the fire so that the men would be able to come forth also and learn Torah. May Hashem bless you with the strength for many more years until Mashiach comes, and indeed everybody will see the light of Torah and will be able to support each other. Thank you very much.
Shavua Tov, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me very great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Rabbi Dr. Aaron Adler. Rabbi Adler made Aliyah with his family in 1979. Rabbi Adler is a graduate of Yeshiva University, where he studied under the legendary Rav Yosef Ber Soloveitchik. He received Samicha from there and later a doctorate in Talmud from Bar-Ilan University. He is currently the Rav in Ohel Nechama Shul in Katamon, having previously served as Rav in the Be'erot Community Shul in Ramot and later as visiting Rav in a shul in Zurich. His educational activities are many and varied. He served as Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Bnei Akiva in Hashmonaim. He was a lecturer to the Israeli Defense Forces and campus rabbi of the EMUNAH College for Arts in Yerushalayim. Rabbi Adler also gives a weekly share at the OU Israel Center and at the Sinai Kollel in Yeshurun Synagogue. In his spare time, Rabbi Adler has led over 20 missions to Poland, where I and several other people here tonight were privileged to accompany him. It was on that trip we really appreciated his vast knowledge of Hasidism and his love of Hasidic melody. In fact, he made a potentially difficult trip into a very meaningful experience. So, without further ado, I hand you over to Rabbi Adler.
Do this.
At this occasion, I was asked to entertain and talk a little bit about Shlomo Carlebach, and we dedicated the entire evening to Reb Shlomo's music. Tonight, I was asked to do something a little different, to deal with Hasidic stories and song, the Hasidic experience. So, let's begin with a little song, and then we'll work on the Hasidic Maisalach and their implications. We talk about Chassidut. It brings us back to the days of Baal Shem Tov 300 years ago approximately. And we know that what happened at that time was not the discovery of a new brand of Yiddishkeit, but rather the focus moved from a purely intellectual description and definition of what it meant, closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, dveikut in a halachic sense, to a type of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, less so by the mind, more so by the heart. Our Rabbi Rav Soloveitchik pointed out once that the Musar movement of Lithuania of the 19th century, and we know some great names from Yisrael Salanta down to the present day, without Chalila saying a bad word about the personalities, the Rav said that the Musar movement was a fiasco. I'll explain to you what he meant by that. While the Hasidic movement in Poland was a smashing success. And you have to realize the Soloveitchik family were not Hasidim. These are thoroughbred Misnagdim. Basically, when you talk about a movement and you want to know if it succeeded, the place, the avenue, the location that you're going to seek out to see if it succeeded in terms of the masses, well, walk around Klal Yisrael. How many people are affected today on a day-to-day, day-to-day lifestyle by the Musar movement? How many people are guided by the thinking, by the teachings of Musar? The Musar movement, in its classic sense, spoke very much about the fact that man was not really worth much, at least some brands of the Musar movement, and most people didn't want to hear that message. The Musar movement, to a large degree, spoke to an elitist group in Lithuania. And when you address an elitist group, you cannot expect that this is going to make it across the board to Klal Yisrael. In Poland, on the other hand, Ukraine and then Poland, there you had widespread type of Jews, but many, many simple Jews who were from Shomrei Torah Mitzvot, living in most difficult conditions, and they needed something to hang on to. This is coming after the aftermath of the various pogroms, of the Gzerot HaChvatat, the Chmielnicki pogroms, and the rise of all kinds of pseudo-messianic movements, Shabtai Tzvi and others, Yaakov Frank. The Hasidic movement was there to give people something to hang on to, that even the simplest person in the world has a chance to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the world of Lithuania, where success was measured by your greatness in Torah scholarship, in Poland, that was not the criteria at all. Not that they didn't have great Talmidei Chachamim, they did have. They had great tzaddikim. When you talk about the masses connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on a different wavelength. And what the Hasidim did, what the Admorim, the Rebbes succeeded, was to have people connect through song. Now they didn't invent this either. Song takes us back to Beit HaMikdash. And that's part of Avodat Hashem. Ashir shal Leviyim Oyu Omrim Beit HaMikdash. No doubt. So there is an aspect of shira and musical accompaniment in Beit HaMikdash. And we also know that in the Middle Ages, even before the official Kabbalistic movement, in the 11th century there was a movement called the Yodei Merkava, those who came down from the chariot. It's an interesting phrase, based on Maaseh Merkava, which we read about just today in the Haftarah from Yeshayahu Perek Vav. Yodei Merkava was a movement, almost let's call it a pre-Kabbalistic movement, and they were the ones who introduced into the Siddur what we say every single day at the end of Psukei Zimra, Vavarach David. Vavarach David was not originally part of Psukei Zimra. Psukei Zimra ended with the end of Tillim. Kol haneshama talel yahaluya, and that's why the Pasuk is said twice, because it's the end of the Sefer. And even Bo Hashem L'olam Amen V'Amen, you can see it's an ending. It's an ending paragraph. The Rambam tells us that Shirat Hayam, Az Yashir, there was a minhag to say it after Yishtabach, before Baruch Hu. Like the way we have on a certain B'Tshuvah, we say Shar Malot B'Mamakim, it's like caught in the web there, after Psukei Zimra, before Baruch Hu. So some communities had the custom to say Shirat Hayam, Az Yashir, some had Ha'azinu, some communities said both, but it was not part of Psukei Zimra. It was already beyond Yishtabach, and anything beyond Yishtabach is outside. Today we say the Az Yashir before Yishtabach. We've brought it into the fold of Psukei Zimra. But Psukei Zimra technically ended with Kol HaNeshamas Ta'alel Yahaluya. It was the Yodei Merkava who introduced Vavarach David, L'cha Hashem HaGdula, B'Gvura, B'Tiferet, V'Netzach V'Hod. These are psukim from Divrei Hayamim, but they were the first to teach us the concept of the concentric circles of the Sfirot, of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. which later was adopted by the Lurianic school of Kabbalah. And that's why it enters, because the idea was that we have to shift gears from one circle to the next, from one sphere to the next, in order to arrive at a Kadosh Baruch Hu. It does not happen in one jolt, in one launch. And the Yordei Merkava believed that it would be music that would serve as the shifting of the gears. If you may, the clutch of the car. You need something to shift gears. And music would be that which would be used as the medium to move us from Gvura to Tiferet to Netzach to Hod and Malchut and so on. So music is not new. It was the Hasidic movement that very much incorporated this as a very important aspect of Avodat Hashem. Several years ago, I heard a shiur from a great Rabbi, Rabbi Lichtenstein, from the Yeshiva Har Etzion, Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi's son-in-law, most of you know him. And he quoted the Rav's uncle, Rabbi Soloveitchik, the Rav's brother, Rabbi Soloveitchik, Zechron Levracha from Chicago, who quoted the Baal Tanya, the founder of Chabad, of Shnei Zalman from Liadim, said there are 3 levels of nigun. The lowest level of nigun is a nigun with words. A higher level of nigun is a nigun without words. I think we mortals can even understand that. There's something very spiritual just about the nigun without the words. But the first Rebbe of Chabad goes on to say there's a higher level, and that's a nigun without a nigun. And this I didn't really understand. I went over to Rabbi Lichtenstein after the shiur and I said, I think I understand what this is. It's a Litvischer nigun. But in all sincerity, somebody heard this from me once and presented me with a book called The Ginah L'Or HaChasidut. And I finally began to understand, even in a small way, what this concept of nigun lelo nigun means. And that was the ability, and very few people would even have this, to make these transitions from chesed to gvura, gvura to tiferet, without the use of a medium. And that means it was really the highest level of nigun. So most mortals would require some type of medium, of nigun, to make the transition. But if somebody was already up in the highest spheres and could do it with automatic transmission, so that was already a nigun without a nigun. A very, very lofty idea, humor aside. And in this sefer, Nigun Niginah L'Or Chasidut, so it's a Lubavitch book, and it's explaining many, many facets of nigun in the world of Chabad. But I'm just going to read a line. It says, Niginat Nigunim Chasidiyim Yichelek Me'avodat Hashem. It's an integral part of Avodat Hashem, the song itself. He's not talking about the words. So that the very, very structure of music, the sound of music, and how that impacts on a neshama, how it impacts on a person's vocal cords, his lips, his tongue, and all the bodily functions that are necessary to bring out the music, all become sanctified because of the music. And I say again, I'm not going to read you the book, but it's an entire exposition here of the role of music in Hasidic life. Now, some of the Hasidic groups, ultimately, we talk about the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov believed that in each generation there was one tzaddik, and his role fundamentally was to allow the tefillah of Klal Yisrael to make it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What were the issues here? In Sefer Megillat Eicha, that was authored by Yirmiyahu Navi, in the 3rd parak, it reads, Satam Tfilati, the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was no longer evident and present amongst Klal Yisrael, what we call Hester Panim at the time of the Churban. So Satam Tfilati, the road to Tfilah was blockaded. We can't pierce through this wall. So it's like you're davening to the wall, and you're not davening to Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the idea was that every generation has one tzaddik who has this ability to somehow transcend the wall and bring the message of Tfilah to Kadosh Baruch Hu. So what we have to do is like with a telephone call, not direct dial, but an operator-assisted call. Remember those? And the Rebbe, the Admor, would serve as the operator. And if you directed your tefillah through the tefillah of the Admor, then you had a fighting chance that your tefillah would also make it to Kisei HaKavod. You can hear a little bit why the Vilna Gaon was so against the Chassidut. On this very, very point, by the way, the Vilna Gaon did not tolerate it. The Vilna Gaon said this sounds very foreign to Judaism. and that each Jew, no matter what the circumstances, had the ability to daven. But nevertheless, this is pure Chassidut, and each generation would have one tzaddik. But the Baal Shem Tov had a primary student, and he was Rav Dov Ber the Maggid from Mezrich, who he had many students. And from those many students, we now have differentiation. The Baal Shem Tov is not in Poland, he's in what modern-day Ukraine, in Mezbich. And then the Maggid from Mezrich, that's still the Ukraine. But at that point, the third generation of Chassidut, you now have differentiation. Reb Shnei Zalman from Liadi is White Russia. It eventually moves to the town of Lubav, which becomes Lubavitch, by the third Admor of Chabad. Admor, Adonenu, Moreinu, Rabbeinu, a Rebbe, a Tzaddik, all kinds of nicknames. But Chassidut moves to Poland by another great individual, student of the Maggid from Mezrich, and he is Rabbi Elimelech from Lizhansk. And we're going to see a few Maiselach from Rabbi Elimelech from Lizhansk and see how special he was, because he becomes the father of Polish Chassidut. It takes a few generations. His prime student is the Choyze from Lublin, who has a prime student who's known as the Heilige Yid. It moves to the town of Psishcha, and from Psishcha it moves to Kotsk by Reb Menachem Mendel of Kotsk. And Menachem Mendel from Kotsk has a prime student who is Reb Itcha Meyer Alter, becomes the first Rebbe of Gur, and the rest is history. Just go to Geula, and you'll see the Gera dynasty there. But from the Choyze from Lublin, it branches out to others, and we have a whole different marketing of what the Hasidus is all about. So some of the Hasidic groups, for example, Gur, the emphasis on Talmud Torah was there. There are Ger and Nigunim, no doubt. I'll sing some tonight. But the emphasis of Ger was Talmud Torah, to sit and learn. In Chabad, it's somewhat of a mixture. There's a tremendous amount of learning going on in Chabad. The Alter Rebbe, the Rabbi Azaken, the author of the Tanya, the Baal Tanya, Zalman from Liadi, all these names, one person. He emphasized study. I mean, he puts together in one book, the Tanya, for the first time, a compilation of Kabbalistic thought that's appropriate for Balabatim, for simple people. Before then, who studied Chassidut? Chassidut was, well, who studied Kabbalah? It was a small core of an inner circle of people who would dabble with Kabbalah. Tanya made it a very, very popular subject. I'm not sure that Reb Shlomo Zalman from Liadi had in mind that Madonna is going to study Tanya or Kabbalah, but it has become very, very popular, as you know. But Chabad has Nigun also. So Nigun is not the first and foremost, but it's an ingredient in the Chassidut of Chabad. If we jump to Mozhitz, I can tell you just recently I saw a vort from the Rebbe of Mozhitz, but it was such a rare thing, because when you say Mozhitz, you think Nigun. You don't really think a Dvar Torah. You can have a Ger Nigun, and you can have a lot of Torah from the Sfat Emet. You can have a Lubavitcher Nigun, but you have a lot of Torah from all the Rebbes. You say Mozhitz, you're going to sing Nigunim, and that's where it is. In Poland, when you go to the kever of the Mozhitz Rebbe, you do nothing else but sing a Nigun, because that's how you're going to remember the Mozhitz. And the Mozhitz had tremendous impact on the song of Hasidut of Poland. They used to compose new Nigunim every year before Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and send out the kids to the various neighborhoods to teach them the new Nigunim. And it was an industry. Thanks to Ben-Zion Schenker, who in my growing up days was an icon, because we had all the records of Mozhitz. And only 2 years ago, I had a wedding in New York City. I finally had a schut of meeting him. Adner Betzrim, he was then 85 years old. He had a bracha under the chuppah, and I went over to him, shake his hands. I said, I know you for so many years, and I never met you. But this Ben-Zion Schenker not only was a composer, but also a singer. He cut the records for Mozhitz and preserved so many of the beautiful, beautiful Nigunim of Mozhitz, like V'yiten Lecha and Hamavdil of Mozhitz. And no different. That's a little lower. And I can tell you that I learned this thing when I was a little child. We had a great uncle, my grandfather's younger brother, who was about tefillah in the shtibel that I was brought up. And he used to teach my brother and myself nigunim before he would introduce them. And this nigun came out in the late 1950s, this Mizmor David. I remember sitting in a park bench in Washington Heights on a Friday, and our uncle was teaching us this nigun. Because on Yom Tov, when it doesn't come out on Shabbat, and you don't sing Kel Adom, and you jump right away to the continuation of davening, so he wanted to sing anyway, by Kulam Ahuvim, Kulam Berurim, Kulam Giborim, Kulam Kiddoshim. So I remember one of my chaverim in the Yeshivat Bnei Akiva, the principal of the school, Rav Yoni Berlin, he told me, the way we treat all our kids, they're Kulam Ahuvim and Kulam Kedoshim. The problem is Kulam Potchim et Piyem. But this is said about the Malachim. And my uncle sat down with us, and in his Galicianische Miftah, Kilo Ma'ivim, and it worked out nicely to sing the Kulam Ahuvim. This is the first time I heard it, not even to the words of Mizmor David. And it stuck with us till this very day. Moshetz. Now, we know, and we heard this from Shlomo Carlebach often enough, that he himself was tremendously influenced by Moshetz. Of course, Shlomo developed his own style, and I'm not here to do Shlomo, but we do one Shlomo just as Motzei Shabbos anyway, so how can we go without it?
Eliyahu,
not tolerate an oilam that doesn't sing with them. Today there's an entire literature called Sipurim Chasidiyim, Hasidic stories. The famous Rav Shlomo Yosef Zevin Zatzal, who was the editor of the Encyclopedia Talmudit, wrote a whole book of compilation of Hasidic stories. All you have to do is go to Rabbeinu Google on the computer. He's from the Gedolim today, Rabbeinu Google. He's a Boki and everything. And just ask, do a search for Sipurim Chasidiyim, and you're going to get an unbelievable amount of information, source material. So I culled just a few things that I thought might be of some interest. I'll translate. I know we're doing this in English tonight. But just take a look at the pages that I handed out. If somebody did get a page, we still have some here. The last one on the first side, the last one, it says Kriyat Shem Lenolad. See it? Kriyat Shem Lenolad. Calling the name. All right, so there was a minhag amongst the Hasidim that they wouldn't dare give a name to a baby without the Rebbe suggesting the name. Okay, any of you familiar with this minhag? That the Hasidic Rebbe is the one who's going to call the shots? Whether the name, it's not that you took a name, a candidate name to the Rebbe and asked if this was appropriate or not. You came with no name, and the Rebbe was going to give a bracha. The baby wasn't even born yet. Inei Yodua. It's known. Ki haminhagu etzel harbe rashim hamaminim b'tzadikim. It means you have to really be a believer in the tzaddik. Kasher ishto muberet, the wife is expecting. Hu shoel v'doresh etzel harabi shelo, ez Hashem yikrei lehavlad shetelei lishto. Already before the birth, already we'd like to have an inside track as to what the name of the baby is going to be. V'nizdamen pam achat she'amadeti lefnei ha'admor miskvera. Skvera Rebbe. Kasher ba, later in the American Hasidic life, there's a town called Square Town, or New Square. But this is back in the town of Skvera in Europe. Kasher ba lefanav she'ela kazot. Such a question came to the Skvera Rebbe. V'yam yeshiv lashoel. He used to respond as follows. Im teled ishtecha ben zachar. If there's going to be a baby boy, tikra shmo kach v'kach. The name would be this. V'im nekeva teled tikra shma kach v'kach. If it's a boy, it's this. If it's a girl, it's that. Upamim achadim, several times. Nizdamein sheshamati. I heard mipi kodsho from the Rebbe himself. Shelo amar lashoel rak shem achad. He only said one name. L'dugma, for example, shem l'zachar. He just, the father, the expecting father, would ask the question, and the response was, if it's a boy, say whatever the name. V'imaya shoel bardat, if the person who asked had some seichel, lo sha'al od me'uma, loud boy, never had a follow-up question. He just accepted the fact that if the Rebbe is now giving one name, a boy's name, then clearly the wife is giving birth to a boy. And if the Rebbe gave a girl's name, the wife is giving birth to a girl. Omnam, however, Imaya shoel shalomidad, if the questioner was not such a smart fellow, and he asked this follow-up question, V'sha'al admor, u'mayiyem teled ishti nekeva, and what's the deal if the wife gives birth to a girl? Az amar lo admor shem lenekeva gam kein. So then he gave a name for the girl as well. Kein is damen li pa'amim achadot. This happened to me several times. Pa'am achat, dibarti minyan ze mishachad, Shayano Seilat Mor Hanal. I heard the following story. Siper li oto ish, the person told me, Ki pam achat haya etzel Admor, by the Rebbe, be'et shayta ishto mubered, when his wife was expecting. V'sha'al Admor, ez Hashem yikal le'avlat shishtaled ishto. It's the same question. Ve'amar lo shem shel zachar. The Rebbe gave him a boy's name. V'sha'al hu od l'Admor, ma yem telei nekivah, if the baby's a girl. Ez Hashem ekalo, what name could we suggest? Amar lo Admor, shem shel nekivah. He gave a girl's name. Amar isha, now the person said to the Rebbe, that's not a good idea. Ki imo korim ota b'shem zeh she'amar Admor v'yeh b'chayim chayita. No, rega. The Rebbe said Leah, but this fellow's mother's name is Leah, and she's still alive. And that didn't sit well. That didn't sit well with the fellow, because there's even an implication that the mother is going to pass away before the baby's born. And he didn't like this answer. He tells the Rebbe, I'm sorry, I'm reject. Imagine a chosed telling the Rebbe, I can't accept this. Amar lo Admor, im kain bechrach sheteleit ishtecha ben zachar. Instead of changing the name for the girl birth, he says, well, then what's left is your wife's going to have a boy. Vayisai ish shana lebeito, v'ishto yalda ben zachar. Worked out fine, and they had a boy. Kasher, b'diuk exactly as the Admor said. About after 9 years, 9 years after she had her last baby, all of a sudden, it's very miraculous, she gives birth to a daughter. A span of 9 years passes, she's not having children anymore, at least she thinks she's not, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she's expecting, and she gives birth to a daughter. Meta imo rechmana litzlan. When the daughter was born, the mother died. Ka'u shem kishem imo kasher amar admor mikodem. As the Rebbe had suggested all along. Okay, what exactly are you going to do with this story and how that impacts on... Well, you don't have to do anything with it. Nothing, okay. This has to do, as the opening line said, you have to be a ma'aminim batzadikim. See, if you're a little bit of a skeptic, these stories are not for you. They're not for you. But I'm trying to just bring you a little bit into the world of Chassidut. And in the world. What?
EMUNAH's in the world.
EMUNAH's in the world, right, but it's a different EMUNAH, right. Or, for example, the bottom of that second page, Hachanot LePesach, this brings us already to Rabbi Elimelech from Lizhansk. Echad michasidei Rabbi Elimelech, Haya socher b'mashkot charifim, socher b'yash. One of his Hasidim dealt with the spirits and whiskeys. Yash is yain saraf, saraf is whiskey. Lefnei Chag HaPesach, Haya Chasid mechin chavit gedola shel yash. Before Pesach, the Chassid prepared a tremendous barrel of yash, of whiskey. Ota haya noheg lavriach il mavar me'ever legvul u'machra. I used to smuggle it to the other side of the border. And Vahirviach v'me'arevach from the prophets, haya koneh mechin et kol tzorchei Chag HaPesach. I made enough money on these deals to have his Pesach provisions. Ota shana, that year, Nasuach Chasid be'agalah b'chavit yashalo. As usual, he traveled with his wagon, with his barrel of yash. V'tov shehu menaseh lavriach et hagvul. He's trying to cross the border. Tafsu oto shomrei hagvul. The guards caught him. V'chlimu et mitano hayakar, and they confiscated his merchandise. And here, this man is in bad shape, bad financial shape. All his money is invested in this one barrel. If he does not succeed to sell this barrel of yash, he's going to be penniless. We're going to have provisions for Pesach. So he came running to the Rebbe, Rabbi Elimelech. He tells the Rebbe everything that just happened to him. In his difficult financial situation. He wants to hear what the Rebbe suggests. Go back to the border, the guard at the border. Tell him, there was a mistake. Simply a barrel of water. Open up the barrel and take a sip, and you'll see it's only water. He did exactly what the Rebbe suggested. Went to the border guards. It's a barrel of water. Just open up and you taste it. They tasted it. It was only water. And they gave it back to him. Fine, okay. Miyad achziru et hachavit lechasid. Shemiher lahatina lagaloto, he quickly put it onto his wagon. V'lachzor leRebbe Rabbi Melech. Nichnas hachasid leRebbe, v'tchil boche shenit, b'dmot shel Yishuv, started crying again. Bitter etrerin, as they say. Hayta li chavit shel yash, שאותה אמור הייתי למכור, וברווח לקנות את כל צורכי חג הפסח. I had a barrel of good schnapps, and I would have gotten good money for this. Now what do I have? A barrel of water. I mean, I'm not going to get any money for this. ועכשיו, כשחבית יש הפכה לחבית מים, נשארתי חסר כל, ולא פרוטה לפורטה. I can't do anything with it. ומהיכן אשיג את כל צורכי החג? Where am I get money for Pesach, provisions? אמר לו הרב, טעם גם אתה מהמשקה שבחבית. Open up the lid and take a sip. טעם החסיד מהמשקה, הוא מצא שאכן הוא יש משובח. It's schnapps all along. וליהודי היה כל צורכי פסח בהרחבה גדולה. And he was able to sell off his produce, merchandise somewhere, and he had enough money for Pesach. Again, how exactly Rabbi Melech pulled this off? Was it psychology here? By telling the water gods, it's not whiskey, it's water. When you tell somebody it's water, and they take a sip, all right, they think it's water, so it already tasted like water. Does it mean necessarily that he pulled off some hocus pocus and who knows what, and the liquid there changed from whiskey to water, and then back from water to whiskey? Or was it really a psychological test of the mind? I don't know. If you're a thoroughbred chassid, no doubt the whiskey turned water, and the water turned whiskey. You take it for what it's worth. But you have to realize these Hasidic amaises are not just once in a blue moon. These are stories that generated over and over again. If you go back to the first page.
And maybe it's only a maisa.
What was that?
Maybe it's only a maisa.
Maybe it's only a maisa, but you should know that even only a maisa, that means it didn't really happen. There's a moral lesson. There's a lesson. They're trying to teach us. In the Hasidic Shemaises, they're clearly trying to teach us something about the role of the Rebbe and the possible influence that the Rebbe had on people's lives, and how perhaps with Tzaddik Gozer Kadosh Baruch Hu Mekayem, the Rebbe could intervene on some level, and people really believe that. The story of the Besht, Miyabesh Nahar, the Baal Shem Tov dries up a river. The Felach Bessarabia in Romania, in the area, in the district of Bessarabia in Romania. There was a river that was a regular river that flowed past. There was a kala from some village before the wedding, Kodem HaChuppah. She went there to do tvilah before the chuppah. And she went through that river. She drowned in the river. Nodazot la Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov went to that river, Vayelech Baal Shem Tov al Nahar, and he issued a decree, V'yigzor alav, ki b'shvil ma'aseh zeh, almost a punishment to the river, Yidyabesh, the river should dry up, V'yasu mimenu agam mayim katzar. What will remain is just a small little pond, nothing more than that. V'kach v'chein haya, and that's what it was. Charkach, chei ptirat habesh, after the Baal Shem Tov died, pam achat nasa derech sham, echad b'bnei ha-Baal Shem Tov. Somebody from the family of the Baal Shem Tov passed by. Uba'avro derech oto agam nidracheva agam. When he came to this area, somehow the pond now became very wide. It became already a deep lake. V'ratzam l'shtof v'litbo et ish hanal, and was ready threatening to drown this person who's from the household of the family of the Baal Shem Tov. Vayavo Baal Shem Tov batzmo me'olam elyon. Baal Shem Tov returned from the upper worlds. Vayatzil oto b'sher b'chayim. And the Baal Shem Tov returned to this world, saved him, and he remained alive. Vayomel Baal Shem Tov tells this descendant, Ki maya yodea ata, if I would now know, echu ha'avir me'olam hazeh, what the air, the atmosphere of this world, olam hazeh, feels like, Lo haya ba le'olam hazeh latzilo. I never would have come back to rescue you. Ki kashe alav me'od lisbol ha'avir me'olam hazeh. It is so difficult to tolerate the air of this world after having been already in the upper world. Ha'maseh shamati me'ish echad shaya sham etzel oto agam mayim I heard this from somebody who was actually there, as if to say we have to have some testimony. These Maisalach happened all the time. All the time. Again, you're a skeptic. This can't be, this is ridiculous. There are even some halachic problems with this kind of a story. Very serious halachic problems of Doesh Elabetim. I mean, can this really happen? And so on. Can people believe after the passing of a tzaddik that the tzaddik is still impacting? Go ask your local Lubavitcher Chassid if that's going to happen. It's not even a joke. We have at the Lifshitz College that I teach, we have a secretary who's a staunch Lubavitcher Chassid. So she had some campaign material before the election for a particular party. So I try to remind her that in a school this is forbidden. You're not allowed to do that. You can't campaign for any particular party within the walls of a school in any division of the educational system in this country. And second, I said, and by the way, off the record, I said, why do you support this party? So, because the Rebbe said so. The Rebbe said so. As far as I know, the Rebbe is not here for almost 20 years already. But that's not an issue. The Rebbe said certain things when he was alive, and they are now reconstructed upon the contemporary situation, and therefore it becomes a contemporary statement. The Rebbe said so, and this is the way you have to believe in this for this to happen.
But they don't have Maishes about not Hasidic Rebbe.
Non-Hasidic Rebbes. So what is a non-Hasidic Rebbe? I can tell you what a non-Hasidic Rebbe is. It's a Litvisher Rosh Hashiva today. No, I'm not joking. I think what those people who understand, who knew what Volozhin was, the Rosh Hashivas of Volozhin and Yeshiva were not Admorim. Never did the Rav Chaim from Volozhin, the Talmud from the Vilna Gaon, never did the Netziv of Volozhin or the Rav's great-grandfather, Beis Halevi, Rabbi Yosef Dober Soloveitchik, expect that Talmidim would come to them for eitzes and wouldn't make decisions. The Rav once told me that it was very easy to be a chassid, very difficult to be a misnagid, because if you're a chassid, you make one basic decision in life, to be a chassid of the Rebbe. After that, it's easy rider, because the Rebbe is going to make the fundamental, critical decisions for you in life. But if you're misnagid, every time you wake up in the morning, you have to make a decision how to get dressed. And you have to make many, many decisions. A chassid makes less decisions.
You have to listen to what is the decision.
Well, that's very
easy.
much not easy. If you've read Esther Farbstein's very, very, very important book, let's call it very important scholarly work on the Shoah, dealing with, I would say, the most sensitive religious questions that we have to deal with. It has a lot to do with how the certain Admorim, not all, certain Admorim, basically gave guidance to the Chassidim to stay put in Poland, and they perished, and some of these Admorim ended up getting out at the end. These are difficult questions. Difficult questions. Now, if you're really a staunch Chassid, you will say, like whether you're the Belzer Chassid or a Gerach Chassid, you will say that the Rebbe had no other recourse but to survive in order to guarantee the survival of the Hasidic movement. Because the truth of the matter is, as we exited the Shoah, the Belzer Hasidus was, as they say in this country, al panim. I mean, it was almost obliterated. Almost obliterated. 9 people. Almost obliterated. And you take today, the Belzer and Gur, they really dominate the scenes. And it has a lot to do with the fact that both Rebbes ultimately survived. So, again, I'm not here to pass judgment on Rebbes. These are very difficult questions, whether it's the Satmar Rebbe or others. These were difficult questions that Esther Farbstein indeed tries to deal with. The same chaver of mine, Rav Yoni Berlin, told me the following story. Here in Israel, there was a non-religious couple who were having fertility issues, and having dealt with it, however they dealt with it, somebody suggested that they go for a bracha to some Mekubal in Yerushalayim, some Kabbalist. And they really weren't the type of people to engage a Mekubal, but if you're desperate, so you're willing to get a bracha from a Mekubal. They met up with some Kabbalist. They met up with some mitavech, somebody, an intermediary, who would bring their request to the Mekubal. And what came back was, indeed, the Mekubal was willing to give them a bracha that they'll have a son, but with one condition. They must call the son the name Elimelech, because the schut that they're going to have a child is a little taking into the overdraft of the schuyot of Rabbi Elimelech from Lizhansk. So if they call the baby Elimelech, if they agree to these terms, they'll have a baby. Yofi, they agree. You know, when you're desperate, you're desperate. So fine, the baby, the mother, the wife is expecting, and she has a healthy born boy, and they decide, the mother decides, Elimelech is not exactly a modern Israeli name, so they decided to give another name. The Mitavech bumps into the husband one day, this intermediary, and he says, well, no, what's new? Mazel tov, we had a boy, Yofi. So the Mitavech says, and you called him Elimelech? No. You see, my wife really didn't think this was a good name because, it's not an Israeli name. So what did you call him? We called him Noam.
Oh.
The Noam Elimelech. Without knowing. They called him Noam. Yeah. You never know. You never know how these things work. Sure. Before we get to the very most interesting story from Lizhansk, so I just want to just share some of the melodies of Gur and Chabad that we're familiar with. We're familiar, we just don't know sometimes that they're Gur and Chabad. No, this is Ger. The one who recorded this was, remember who? No. Verdiger. David Verdiger. We know the son more today, Mordechai Ben David, but Ben David is David Verdiger. Yeah, a long time ago. Yafeh. This is the good one from David Verdiger. But this is authentic Ger Niggin that today sung, as you know, all over, literally all over. I want to just share with you this first Maisala on the first page where it says Asipur Rabbi Elimelech v'Karata Marak. So there's several stories about bowls of soup. All kinds of bowls of soup stories. One bowl of soup story is a Balatanya story. The Rav Shnei Zalman from Liadi was invited guest in some community, and before Shabbat, the entire family wanted to take part in the Shabbos preparations. Nobody wanted to be left out. And indeed, there was a lot to be done to prepare the house, to prepare the food. So they had a family meeting on Thursday. They gave out all the various tasks. Fine, everything was set, and everybody goes about doing what they had to do to prepare the house and the food, the kitchen for Shabbat. In the middle of the night, somebody wakes up, a member of the family, remembers there's one task that was forgotten: to put salt and spices in the soup. So instead of waking everybody up and convening another family meeting, the person just goes quietly to the kitchen, a bissel salz, a bissel pepper, goes back to sleep. Half hour later, somebody else wakes up and says, "Boy, we forgot to give out the task of putting in some spices and salt in the soup." So why wake up? Everybody gets up, puts salt, puts pepper, and this goes on 8 times over throughout the night. Ken sich vorstellen what the soup tasted like on Friday night. They serve the soup, and it's fuya. I mean, nobody can touch it. And the Rebbe is eating and eating and eating, and they're embarrassed, and they can't understand. It's inedible. I mean, how can you eat this? And they asked the Rebbe, can't you taste it? That it's they're apologizing, something went wrong here, something spoiled. They don't even know what happened. And the Rebbe says he has accustomed himself many, many years ago to completely void his sense of taste. That the only reason that he eats is to be strong for Avodat Hashem. The only reason. Although he said it's quite permissible to enjoy the food, he felt that by enjoying the food, so while of course he's eating so he can be strong for Avodat Hashem, the enjoyment of the food takes away a little bit of a sliver of the Avodat Hashem. And therefore he trained himself that he doesn't taste any of the food. Therefore it made not a bit of a difference to him whether it had salt, or was too much salt, or too much pepper, and so on. That's one soup story. Another soup story happened to the Rebbe's grandfather, Reb Chaim from Brisk. This is not a Chassidish Shemaisa. It's a thoroughbred Litvish Shemaisa. Reb Chaim's mind was working all the time about resolving difficulties in the Rambam, and in the Halakha, and the Gemara, and so on. So they say he was once eating a bowl of soup, and he could not focus, and the soup went right into his beard. He could not focus where the spoon goes, because his cup. He was thinking. And next thing you know, half the soup was running down his beard. This is a story from Reb Chaim, yeah. And they asked him what happened. He says, his cup was in the Rambam. It wasn't in the cup of soup. But this is a story of a powerful story, that there's a woman who wrote a doctorate at Bar Ilan University, a Dr. Dina Cohen, who I do not know, but she wrote a doctorate on Hasidic Shemaisas. Now, the truth of the matter is, when you subject Sipurei Hasidim to academic dissection, you're really taking the neshama out. That's what you're doing with it. So I'm not going to do that now, but just make some points, I think very, very interesting points. Let's read the story first, and then we'll make some comments. The first story of Rabbi Melech and the bowl of soup, Bekarat HaMarak. It's from the Sefer Oel Elimelech, which is the Sefer of stories of Rabbi Elimelech from Lizhansk. And there are two players here. One is Rabbi Elimelech, and the other is Rabbi Menachem Mendel from Rimanov. Now, in some of my groups in Poland, we've gone down south, in southeast Poland, to the Rimanova. Today it's a town that has no Jews left. There was a shul, a remnant of a shul, that was a churva, literally a churva. The roof was already not there any longer. It was the building, the walls were up, the roof was not there. Grass was growing inside, very high. Nobody tended to the grass. The windows were banged out, and there was no real entrance to talk about. You had to slide through. And really, it said everything you wanted to say about what happened to Polish Jewry. It was just completely obliterated. Yet in Brooklyn, New York, in Flatbush, there's a Hasidic Rebbe who stems from the Rimanova dynasty, and he decided that he's going to raise some money and fix it up a little bit. That's a question. I'm not even going to get into this, whether this is good for the Jews or not. There are certain places where the Hasidim in Chutz La'aretz invested money to fix up these churvas and make them into a shul, even though nobody davens there. But when the groups come, at least they should see epis, something of what it looked like. For example, in Bobov, the shul was rebuilt and reconstructed. So this fellow, this Rav in Rebbe in Flatbush, engages in rehabilitating the shul. Now, I came across this the second time that I visited Rimanov. I saw it in the process of its rehabilitation. And the reason why I went there, because when I was rabbinating by remote control to a community in Zurich. That's a concept. I sat here in Yerushalayim, and by remote control I had a kehillah in Zurich. So I got to know a very, very nice family who was planning to make a bar mitzvah for one of their grandchildren. They themselves, the grandchild himself, was a direct descendant from the Rimmen of a Rebbe. The Rimmen of a Rebbe yahrzeit was the day after Lag Boimer, the 19th of Iyar, and this boy's bar mitzvah day was the 19th of Iyar. So the grandfather, a Baruch Hashem well-to-do person, decided he's going to make the bar mitzvah in the Rimmen of a shul. And he asked me what it looks like. I said, listen, it's a churva, but they're rehabilitating it. So I went back for another trip, and we went to Rimmenov, and I reported to this gentleman in Zurich where it's holding, and they were making some progress, and there was a fighting chance by this boy's bar mitzvah, it's going to be possible to make a bar mitzvah there. But when I went to visit, the workers there, the Polish workers, thought that I was representing that Rebbe from Flatbush. So they treated me like a king. They gave me this grand tour, and I said, oh, this looks nice, this is nice. Everything's nice. Emil had nothing to do with it. And I went back to Zurich and explained to them that, yes, I think in a year's time. And indeed, the building's not finished yet, but it's very much livable. And they had a very interesting bar mitzvah there at the Rimmen of a shul. So before I even get to this story, something happened in that shul in Rimmenov. The Rebbe himself was the Shliach Tzibur for Yom Noroim. And he got to the poem, the piyut of Lekei L'Orech Din. We all know the Lekei L'Orech Din. It follows the Aleph Bet, Lebochen, Levavot, Legoleh Amukot, and so on. It follows the Aleph Bet, you can remember by heart. So one of the lines is Lekoneh Avadav Badin. Right? So we passionately, the nusach that we use, Lebochen, Levavot, Beyomoim Din. Right? The doivem mishorim so here you have got a letter ayin, the letter kuf, the koneh avadav badin. So the Rebbe is davening, and they get to the keller of din. And when he gets up to the koneh avadav badin, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, he acquires his slaves badin, in judgment. What does this mean? The Rebbe stops dead in his track. The Rimmenova, Rabbi Menachem Mendel from Rimmenov, who was also a Talmud from the Maggid Mezrich, but he's a younger contemporary of Rabbi Elimelech from Lizhansk. And he's going to feature in the story we're going to read. So the Rebbe stops dead in his tracks, and all the Chassidim are standing there. This is the Milach Hazar Tashatz, and they're standing, and the Aron Kodesh is open, and he's standing there. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a half an hour passes, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, almost an hour passes, and the Rebbe goes, Badin. What was this interruption? He just stood there, did nothing. Well, at least it seemed that he did nothing. After davening, obviously the Rebbe was approached. He had to explain what exactly happened. The Rebbe said he went into a trance. He went into a trance that his neshama started floating up, and he saw the Satan with a wheelbarrow of the Averot of Am Yisrael. And it was a terrible sight. The wheelbarrow was full and overflowing with Averot. So the neshama of the Rimmenova tells the Satan, where you bringing these Averos? Oh, it's Rosh Hashanah. We're bringing it to the Rabbi Shalom for din, for mishpat. So the Rimmenov's neshama tells the Satan, you know, a few kilometers back, there were 3 or 4 Averos that fell off the wheelbarrow. You know what? I'll watch the wheelbarrow for you. You go back and fetch those 3 lost Averos, and so fine, great deal. The Satan goes back and running back for his Averos, and meanwhile the Rimmen of his neshama takes the wheelbarrow, throws all the Averos off a cliff, and the wheelbarrow is empty. The Satan comes back. What happened to all my Averos? He has his 3 Averos that he caught up with, and that's it. But the wheelbarrow is empty. So he said, they got lost, they got stolen, whatever. So Satan summons the neshama of the Rimmenova to the high court, to the Beit Shalmaila, to the Rabbi Shalom, for a mishpat. I mean, you're a ganef. What's going on here? So Rabbi Shalom asked the Rimmenov's neshama, you know, what happened? He says, well, I stole them, and they're not here. All right, you stole them. Pay up. You have to pay up. You're a ganef, you have to pay. Rimmenova says, I have nothing. So what does the Chumash say? V'nimkar b'gnevato. That if the ganav has nothing to repay, you sell him as a slave. And he'll work those years and pay off what he owes to the person who was stolen from, the victim. So the Kadosh Baruch Hu puts out a tender, a michraz, who wants to buy the Rimeneva as a eved. Any takers here? And there are no takers. None of the malachim are interested in the neshama of the Rimeneva as an eved. So Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I will buy him as my eved. And that's what it means. Lekoine avodov badim. It took about an hour for this whole story to play itself out. And that's what it meant, lekoine avodov. These stories, first of all, this story could have happened, by the way. This is not one of these stories that Efsher maybe. This story really could have happened, and it was in that shul that we visit. That we know for sure. It speaks of the tremendous amount of Mesirat Nefesh that the Rebbe's had for Klal Yisrael. Tremendous. They're willing to be Mesirat Nefesh themselves for the people. And embedded in that story is really that message. So you have now Rabbi Melech from Lizhans and the young Rabbi Nachum Mendel from Rimenov. He's still one of the Chevra. He's still one of the Chassidim. And the story goes, Biotom mistofef betzel kvod kodsho. He was still under the wings of his Rebbe, the Kadosh Rabbi Melech Zatzal, Zevet Tzadik Bracha. B'terem nodal the Ish Mofet. He was not yet known as a Baal Moifes himself, Ubal Ruach HaKodesh. V'ayam ke'echad ben HaChasidim. HaYoshvim Lefnei Rabam. He was just this Menachem Mendel from Rimenov, was just one of the fellas. Kara Adavar. The following happened. This is how Rabbi Menachem Mendel is being introduced to us in this story. One of the fellas, that's all. B'yom HaShabbat b'Sudah Shniya, the Shabbos meal, the morning meal, b'shivto yachad im kol ha'mesubin lefnei Rabam. They're all sitting together around the Shabbos table, Shabbos meal table, with their Rebbe, Rabbi Melech. Kasher hemid ha'mishamesh et karat marak lefnei Rabam, when the one who served the bowl of soup before the Rebbe, Rabbi Melech, lakach harab kadosh harabi Rabbi Melech et hakara v'afcha al piyah. Just turned the plate, the bowl upside down, had everything spill out. Nishbecha hamarak, everything spilled. Vayitzak Moreno, Rabbeinu Moreno Arav, Rabbi Nachum Mendel, betov behalav upachad, and Rabbi Nachum Mendel from Rimenov yelled out, "Ay, Adoni Mori v'Rabbi, halo yikru otanu kulanu l'masad." They're going to arrest us for this. Vatahanicha mizeh, leave it, let's get out of here. So the other people around the table, they thought he was crazy. Well, why should anybody arrest Rabbi Melech for spilling soup? Why exactly did he spill the soup? The others around the table, and they heard this yelling of the Rimeneva. They almost broke out in laughter. Efes, however, because of the awe that they had for their Rebbe, they held their mouths together. They didn't break out in any laughter because you can't. So it wouldn't be proper respect. Rabbi Melech decides to explain to all of them what just happened. Bini, shalom lanu, al tira, halo anachnu po hayom kulanu. We're all here. What do you mean we're all here? But for a moment we weren't here. They explained. One of the government of ministers, mizimot had a plan to do evil to all the Jews in the country. And actually put it in a document, all the venom in the document, and all he needed now was the royal seal to make it active. This minister didn't succeed in getting the royal stamp to put on it. Why? Every time he was ready, something happened. The document wasn't ready to properly put it on the table of the king. Finally, this letter that speaks of the hatred for the Jews and what they're going to do to them, the letter was ready. Nothing could come up, anything that would prevent this letter from going now to the king for final stamping. hachol lefazer alav liyabesh et hadio. The way people would write, they had the ink, and then they would sprinkle some sand on it so that the ink should dry quickly. At that moment, hafakti hakara imamarak lefoal dimyon. Rabbi Elimelech said, at that moment, I took the bowl of soup and I turned it upside down as a gesture. Sheyaseh gam hu kain alaktav. That minister, as he's pouring the sand, something should happen as well. Ve'az ta'a. What happened? That minister made a mistake. Ve'tachat chavit hachol, in the place of the sand, the barrel of sand, lakachat chavit hadio. He took the barrel of ink, v'avcha alaktav, and instead of drying the ink, he ended up smudging the whole thing. He poured on ink, and of course it ruined the whole thing. Havrei chazeh, Harav HaKadosh Mimriminov, Ra'a et Kol HaNaseh. The Rabbi Melech calls the Riminova Avrei Chazeh. Who's known as Avrei in the Chumash? Yosef, right? There's something, he's pointing now to the others that there is a special appointment, just like Yaakov Avinu appoints Yosef. So Rabbi Elimelech, in a sense, is appointing Rabbi Menachem Mendel to be the successor here. He saw everything that was going on. Not only did I see it, because I was a participant, I was the one who turned the bowl of the soup over because it was a gesture to force that minister to turn over the wrong barrel, and he turned over the ink. But Rabbi Menachem Mendel saw the whole thing. And not only did he see it, Rabbi Menachem Mendel lost it. Where was he? He was there. He was there, and he thought that the one who poured the ink over the document wasn't the minister, but was Rabbi Elimelech from Lizhans himself. And therefore he screamed out, "They're going to arrest you for this. How can you do this?" Where in fact, of course, Rabbi Elimelech wasn't there at all, but this was all to point out that this Avrech, Tzofeh Beruach HaKodesh, that the Rabbi Menachem Mendel from Riminov was blessed with that measure of Ruach HaKodesh, that he was able to tune in to this whole story. The truth of the matter is, when you hear it just as a story, and you realize that this kind of a Maisala is not only talking about the Shebach of Rabbi Elimelech from Lizhans, but it's talking about succession. It's talking about something of the relationship between one generation of the Admorim and the next generation. This Dr. Dina Cohen has 10 pages that I Xeroxed from the internet about an analysis of this. And I was discussing this with my wife before, and she said, when you take a great Hasidic Shamaisa, you subject it to academic analysis, it just loses touch. And I wouldn't dare even make that presentation here. But I think she makes some valid points about that this is not just a gemachta story, a made-up story, that this kind of story is a story with a message, no doubt. And indeed, Rabbi Elimelech from Lizhans had enormous impact on the development of Chassidut on Polish soil, because he's the first to come to Poland in the town of Lizhansk, and from there it moves to the next generation, who's the Chayzer from Lublin, and Lublin is not just a little city. Lublin is a capital of Poland at the time, and when Chassidut makes it to Poland, makes it to Lublin, Chassidut has really made it, has come home, has matured. And in Lublin there was no small fighting between the Chassidim and the Misnagdim, but ultimately, the Hasidic world prevailed. The Misnagdim world in Lublin said that when the Chayzer from Lublin will die, they're going to make a kiddush. I mean, that's how the schism between Hasidim and Misnagdim are. Said they're going to make a kiddush, and they're going to eat and drink and be merry. And the Chayzer said, the day that I die, nobody's going to eat and nobody's going to drink. What happened was, it was Simchas Torah, and the Chayzer fell out of the window. The Chassidim called this the Nefilah. And Nefilah doesn't just mean the fall. Something happened in a Ruchani way that he fell. And while he survives the fall, but he never really survives. He lives for another 3/4 of a year in a very, very difficult situation, and he dies on Tisha B'Av. The day that he dies, nobody eats and nobody drinks. This is like almost a parting line of the Chayzer from Lublin, who was a Talmud Muvak of the Rabbi Elimelech from Lizhans. All right, we're just going to end with some more Chassidut songs, Chassidish songs that we know. There's a particular niggin from Chabad that's very, very moving. We all know it, but it's really as they say, a neshama dik niggin. Let's listen. From Chabad that I believe is not authentic Chabad. They borrowed it from another Chatzer. That's Chabad also. You know, well, there's a niggin that some of you most probably know. It's a Friday night niggin. It's from Rabbi Aaron Mikarlin, Yair Sof. How many of you sing it on Friday night? Da, 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 da da The singer Yitzhak Meir tells the story in the name of the Maggid from Mezrich. Rabbi Aaron Mikarlin was a Talmud there as well. That they heard Bat Kol Min HaShamayim, that they were so in love with the Nigunim and the way Rabbi Aaron Mikarlin sang Shira Shirim on Friday night, that the Malachim stopped saying Shira Takadosh Baruch Hu momentarily to tune in to the Nigunim of Rabbi Aaron Mikarlin. That came a request that he should compose a nigun for Kedushat Shabbat, and this is where the Koyach Sof came into play. You have to be a chassid to go along with these stories here. So but it's just an absolutely beautiful nigun, absolutely beautiful. It took me a long time to learn it, by the way. It came through my kids and my sons-in-law, and they brought it to the table. But it's really a beautiful nigun. You know, at the time is looking at the watch here, and we're just going to wrap it up with. I don't know if you're up to Shir HaMalos yet, but we'd like to sing Imash Kechech Yerushalayim from Shlomo, and then move into Shir HaMalot. We can do this if you want. I don't know if I'm sure there's some more announcements. You want? Yeah? What? You ready for Shir HaMalot anyway? Are there going to be more announcements? Because you want to make the announcements, and I'm going to lead into Shir HaMalot. Okay?
Please.
Oh, you want to do the raffle first before benching?
We want to do a raffle. Can we just do the raffle?
Sure.
Has everybody got raffle tickets?
Here.
We've got 3 raffles, so I can speak loudly. Okay. All right. Can I get a box, please? Rabbi Adler, can I ask you to draw a raffle, please? If I can just get them. Oh, it's here. Yeah? That's for the first prize, which is a voucher to the Tikra house. Rabbi Adler, please. One to start off. You can read that. I haven't got my glasses on.
13?
13. Oh, very good. Very good. The second prize is a beautiful bowl of fruit made up and donated by Delia. Who's? It's a blue one. Who's 60? 60.
Otherwise, the red will take it.
Somebody must have bought it. We're not up to 60. Could you turn it?
It's 9. 9.
It's 9. It's 9. Who's got 9? Has anyone got 9? 9 blue. Oh well, because in the meantime, everybody check your, please. Now, the third,
It's nominated the basket of fruit. Please draw it again.
Red, 72, 72, 72. You? Oh, good. Jackie's got it. Lovely.
What have I won?
You've won a basket of fruit.
Nice, thank
Yes, with a bottle of wine.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, the third prize, I must tell you, it's something very, very special. It's a picture drawn by a member of our group called Leslie Hamilton. Leslie unfortunately passed away about a month ago, and her daughter donated the painting for us to raffle. So,
It's singing somewhere in England. No, Sandringham, I think. Sandringham? I think it's Sandringham in England.
91, red, 91. Oh, here. We've got, here. Before we go into Ben's, Rabbi Bröden, please, I wanted to thank Rabbi Adler. Rabbi Adler, I come from a Hasidic family, and I certainly enjoyed all the stories, and I know that they're true. So it was beautiful. Please. Yes, please.
Ah,